As we continue our journey through the Bible, today we come to Leviticus chapter 5. I'm sure I've probably talked about this at some point, but chapter divisions are artificial in the Bible. They were added in the 1200s for most of the books, and sometimes they make sense and sometimes they don't. The first three chapters of Leviticus made sense. Where the fourth chapter started makes sense. Each chapter dealt with a different offering: the burnt offering, the grain offering, the fellowship offering, the sin offering. Chapter 4 was a longer chapter than the first three, and chapter 5 is actually carrying on the discussion of the sin offering. And it has an unnatural division, or a lack of a division, really, as we get near the end of the chapter, verse 14 through the end, starts talking about a different offering, the guilt offering. So that would be a natural chapter division right there. We're going to just read it as it's been handed to us through the centuries. We're going to read chapter 5 as is. But so in a sense, a good chunk of chapter 5 could have been included in chapter 4. Why did they divide that way? I don't know. The person or persons that did the chapter divisions, I'm not aware of any documentation of the logic they made for each choice. It could have been length, because chapter 4 was so much longer than chapters 3, 2, and 1, and if also included these first 13 verses of chapter 5, would have been a very long chapter compared to the others. Not a crazy long chapter, nothing we couldn't have handled. There's going to be actually some longer chapters in Leviticus as we get later on. And then chapter 14 seems like a natural division into chapter 6. Honestly, if I were preaching a sermon series, I probably wouldn't do chapter 5 as a sermon if I had that kind of position where I was doing sermons all the time. I would probably stop at verse 13 and pick up the verse 14 at another time. But anyway, just that's a little bit of interesting trivia for you before we read chapter 5. We're carrying on with the discussion of the sin offering, where we left off with chapter 4 last time. And we're going to start the guilt offering discussion, but we're going to abandon it in the middle, and we'll pick up chapter 6 tomorrow. So chapter 5 of Leviticus reads, "When someone sins in any of these ways, if he has seen, heard, or known about something he has witnessed, and did not respond to a public call to testify, he will bear his iniquity. Or if someone touches anything unclean, a carcass of an unclean wild animal, or unclean livestock, or an unclean swarming creature, without being aware of it, he is unclean and incurs guilt. Or if he touches human uncleanness, any uncleanness by which one can become defiled, without being aware of it, but later recognizes it, he incurs guilt. Or if someone swears rashly to do what is good or evil, concerning anything a person may speak rashly in an oath, without being aware of it, but later recognizes it, he incurs guilt in such an instance. If someone incurs guilt in one of these cases, he is to confess he has committed that sin. He must bring his penalty for guilt for the sin he has committed to the Lord, a female lamb or goat from the flock, or as a sin offering. In this way the priest will make atonement on his behalf for his sin. But if he cannot afford an animal from the flock, then he may bring to the Lord 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, as penalty for guilt for his sin. One is a sin offering, and the other is a burnt offering. He is to bring them to the priest, who will first present the one for the sin offering. He is to twist the head at the back of the neck without severing it. Then he will sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, while the rest of the blood is to be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. He will prepare the second bird as a burnt offering, according to the regulation. In this way the priest will make atonement on his behalf for the sin he has committed, and he will be forgiven. But if he cannot afford 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, he may bring 2 quarts of fine flour as an offering for his sin. He must not put olive oil or frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. He is to bring it to the priest, who will take a handful from it as a memorial portion and burn it on the altar along with the fire offerings to the Lord. It is a sin offering. In this way the priest will make atonement on his behalf concerning the sin he has committed in any of these cases, and he will be forgiven. The rest will belong to the priest, like the grain offering. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "If someone offends by sinning unintentionally in regard to any of the Lord's holy things, he must bring his penalty for guilt to the Lord, an unblemished ram from the flock, based on your assessment of its value in silver shekels according to the sanctuary shekel, as a guilt offering. He is to make restitution for his sin regarding any holy thing, adding a fifth of its value to it, and give it to the priest. Then the priest will make atonement on his behalf with the ram of the guilt offering, and he will be forgiven. If anyone sins without knowing it, if anyone sins and without knowing it violates any of the Lord's commands concerning anything prohibited, he is guilty, and he will bear his iniquity. He must bring an unblemished ram from the flock according to your assessment of its value as a guilt offering to the priest. Then the priest will make atonement on his behalf for the error he has committed unintentionally, and he will be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. He is indeed guilty before the Lord. Leviticus chapter 5. We'll see you tomorrow.